Hello and welcome to today's edition of Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness. And the road to human kindness is paved with good people doing good things. The purpose of our program and our whole drive in Endow America Network Foundation is to endow America. We want to endow the nonprofit organizations that do the work that they're supposed to be doing and make it easier for them to continue to provide the services that they provide without having to go out and raise money all the time, which is one of the problems that nonprofits have. So endowing them is really important. One of the nonprofit organizations that's looking to help people all the time, especially at this particular time in our country, is the Hunger Project. And I have as my guest today, Jim Goodman. Jim is an attorney and also a chartered advisor in philanthropy. I see that designation and I light up as a fellow CAP. So good to see you, Jim. And thank you for joining us on Route 664, The Road to Human Kindness.
It's great to be with you, Les. Thank you very much for having us here.
Yes, and the Hunger Project is getting a lot more attention these days. Why is that?
Well, I think people are becoming more aware of global issues all the time. And our work is primarily centered in low-income countries and rural areas, parts of the world where people are chronically malnourished and extremely poor. We work with the poorest people in the world. So I think global issues and conflicts and sometimes calamities are opening up the attention of folks in America and around the world to better understand the plight of people around the world.
So food is a very important commodity, obviously. We need it to be able to survive. And especially in this 21st century that we're in, it's hard to believe that this is still going on. And your services, how many countries are you actually working in right now, Jim?
We work in 12 countries. We work in India, in Bangladesh. Those are two of our largest programs. Those are two countries which probably have the largest population of people living in chronic hunger and poverty. I know that people often think of Africa when they think of world hunger, but South Asia is actually more deeply affected. And we also do work in 9 countries in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, and we work in rural Mexico, in a couple of the poorest states of Mexico where conditions even though much of Mexico is better off, there are areas of Mexico where we work with indigenous women, many of whom are not even Spanish speaking, but who speak Indian languages, local languages, and we work in those regions also.
How do you relate to? How do they know to work with the Hunger Project? How are you identified there? How does it all happen? In other words, what's the mechanics?
Great question. Well, one of the things that I think distinguishes our organization is that our staff and volunteers in every country where we work are indigenous to those countries. So we do not send folks from the U.S. to teach people or tell people what to do. We actually view that as part of a colonial patriarchal approach that has had limited effectiveness, to say the least, over the decades. So we begin with warm relationships in a country with someone there who becomes our country director. We sometimes recruit someone from either government or another NGO to become a country director for our work. And then they build their organization and relationships with agencies and communities in their country. So all the people working in the Hunger Project in Bangladesh are Bangladeshi. Everyone in Senegal is Senegalese. In Mexico, they're Mexican.
The need is significant. It's international.
Yes.
How do you fund that?
Well, a good chunk of our funding comes from people in the United States. This is where we were founded in 1977, so we got our start with people funding us here. But we very quickly spread to raising money in Europe and in Asia, in Australia in particular. And in all those countries, we have support from individuals and foundations. Now, as we've evolved, We've also sourced funding in country. So our India program has engaged in some fundraising directly with European agencies, either in the UK or in European countries or in Australia. Same thing with Bangladesh and some of our African programs, and now in Mexico too. So sometimes our staff in those countries are sourcing their funding directly from either agencies in their country or in other countries.
So now, when they get funding, let's say your agency in Bangladesh gets funding in Bangladesh, where do they buy the food from in order to satisfy the Hunger Project?
Yes, well, we actually aren't in the business, although the name is very misleading, the Hunger Project. It sounds like a food relief organization, but we actually don't distribute food. We have an unusual model, which we began 40 years ago, which is that we partner with people living in chronic hunger and poverty to become the authors of their own development process. So our work really involves mobilizing local leadership, identifying people in rural communities who take responsibility and take ownership for mobilizing the rest of their community to get their basic needs met. And they do that through a variety of ways, creative ways that are appropriate for their environment. So rather than dictating what they need or what they should do, we really engage in a training program. And when I say we, I mean our local staff. Mm-hmm. So in Malawi, our Malawi staff is training local Malawi village leaders to lead their community in a process of development that could involve agricultural expertise coming in to educate farmers about better crops, diversifying their crops, better access to fertilizer, better irrigation techniques. It's really varies from one country to another. But so we don't feed people.
So you're like an agrarian university. You believe in the philosophy: give a man a fish, you feed him for a day; teach him how to fish, you feed him for his lifetime.
Yes, well, Les, it's funny that you say that because I'll take it a step further. We actually have a brochure that on the front says why we don't teach people to fish. So we actually believe, first of all, that one of the things fundamentally keeping chronic hunger in place is the marginalization and discrimination against women. So a fundamental part of our work is bringing gender equality to rural communities. So you will see everywhere we go, we are working with women and men together, but you'll see women up there in the lead side by side with men or in front. Because when women are given access, when they're given a voice in the decisions that affect their lives, women use resources to impact the well-being of everyone in the community. And they do it in a way that's different from what men do with power and resources. So we're not a women's lib organization, down with men.
You're not political. You're not political.
But we really believe,
using the assets, the women are very valuable asset.
They're essential, and it's women and girl children who are more affected by hunger and poverty everywhere in the world. And by lifting and elevating women's power and girls' education, all good things happen for everyone in the community. And that's true really everywhere, we believe.
So this is serious stuff that you're doing. This is, I don't need to make light of it in any way. This is very serious work, and it's very necessary. Why do you think it is so important for this project to be successful worldwide?
Well, I'll just say personally, when I was in my 20s, I actually encountered the Hunger Project for the first time when I was a brand new lawyer and I was in my mid-20s. And I was really thinking about where to put my energy in terms of I already had something in me that wanted to change the world and make it better. But I was thinking about engaging in the environmental movement or getting involved in the Department of State in diplomacy or maybe civil rights. And as I was thinking of these things, when I encountered the Hunger Project and I learned how many people were still dying every day in the world from hunger, it stunned me. I had been to a great college, a great law school, and I learned that 41,000 people were dying every day in the world at that time from hunger and hunger-related diseases. And I was shocked, first of all, at the number, and I was shocked that I didn't know that. after having a wonderful liberal arts and legal education, that was not something that I was hearing about. And it really struck me at the time as the most profound thing that I could put my energy into in the world. I mean, I really think if we boil it down to our family, if someone in our family were hungry, I think that's the first thing we'd be taking care of.
Of course.
So that for me is, I just expand my family to the world. And for me, it's, and by the way, I applaud anyone doing anything to make the world a better place, whether it's curing leukemia or, or taking care of animals or whatever people are passionate about. But I love to invite people to think about being global citizens and expanding their view of their family.
This is all about human kindness. That's what this program is. It's Route 664, the road to human kindness. And of course, you know what 664 is as a chartered advisor in philanthropy. Is there a fundraising organization in the United States that supports you in any way?
A fundraising, well, we have a wonderful partnership with freewill.com, which is an innovative platform for people to create a legally valid will online. And they have brought hundreds of new people to our organization by making it so easy for people to search for a nonprofit and select something that they find attractive. Over the years, we've had support from or relationships with various nonprofit advisory groups. And certainly in my expertise in planned giving, I've come in contact with different philanthropic organizations.
Is there an endowment?
We do not have an endowment, no. And it's something we've been exploring and thinking about. When we were founded with a very bold idea to eradicate world hunger and poverty in 25 years. Mm-hmm. And it was wonderful. The boldness was a wonderful way to launch us into the world and get a lot of interest and excitement. We then got into ending world hunger and realized and learned more as we went along about the extent of it and what it was going to take. And we have built ourselves to be more of a lasting organization. We still intend to eradicate extreme hunger and poverty by the end of this decade, but it is something we have considered, having an endowment. I think many of our investors, we call our donors investors, by the way, many of our investors struggle with the idea of putting money aside that's earning income when it could be immediately put into use, making an impact. So it's
Right.
a balance for us.
Right. That's one of the struggles that nonprofits have universally, is that they need current funding, so it's hard to sometimes put the money aside for the future. So we're all about trying to increase the amount of endowment that there is by utilizing the tools that Congress gave us in 1969, all those years ago, that I'm sure you're very familiar with. In this project, the Hunger Project, your process of teaching people in countries all over the world and having representation all over the world, what is the vision that you see as the completion of this? Is it ever going to be over? Is it something that there'll be a switch somewhere turned on where everybody goes, hey, we need food, we got to do this? I mean, there's a very famous comedian who used to do comic jokes was about the fact that people didn't have food and they were living on a desert. And he would say, if you want to have food, you need to move off the desert, find a place to grow food. But some people that you're dealing with live in those areas where is there agrarian potential there where they can actually farm? There's some situations where it's not possible.
No, there really is potential everywhere that we work, and we have found with innovative irrigation techniques and with the right support from government agencies that are already in existence, that basic economic success can be brought to anywhere in the world where we work. And really for us, I do see an end in sight. I do see the possibility of our reaching a time when everyone in the world has their basic needs met. And I'm not talking about everyone looking like the American dream of a big house and 2 cars in the driveway. The way we live in America, it's really not sustainable already for the world. The world can't sustain just the way we live in the kind of excesses that we see in our culture. So what we are advocating is not that everyone should live the way the well-off people live in the United States, but just that everyone's basic needs be met, which is very achievable.
That's your core purpose.
It's our vision is a world where every woman, man, and child can lead a healthy, fulfilling life of self-reliance and dignity. And that doesn't mean everyone is rich, but just basic needs. What's interesting, Les, is that studies have shown that there's an enormous transformation in the quality of people's experience of their life when they move from not having their basic needs met to having their basic needs met. Clean water, basic sanitation, primary health care that's available and affordable, enough food for simple and nutritious meals, etc. And then those same studies show that when you go from having your basic needs met to having a lot more, there's virtually no change in the quality of your experience of your life. So everything we add on doesn't really make us happier once we have our basic needs met and we can have healthy relationships with family members in our community and not be worried about surviving every day.
Yeah, we in the United States, it's confidence over money, and the rest of the world, it's confidence over sustenance and shelter and things that are very basic, which money doesn't necessarily buy. What is are you finding governments do different governments in these areas have different approaches? Do you find that there's a kind of a pathway as to what governments are more friendly towards what you're doing? Is there an interplay that way?
Yes, very much so. And I will say that we have, because we are an organization, I guess all nonprofits have limited resources, right? We have made a strategic choice along the way to only work in countries where there's a stable democratic government. So there are some large nonprofits that work in conflict areas and specialize in that. The security costs and the challenges they face are enormous and extremely expensive. We have made a decision to, as I said, work in countries where there is a stable government, where there's democratic principles that prevail. And we've never gone into a country without being welcomed by the government of the country. So we often are working, and again, when I say we, our local staff is forging a partnership with the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Women's Education, if there is one, with whatever relevant ministries there are for agriculture, health, women's empowerment. And we are forging partnerships with those agencies to collaborate with our community partners.
What's been the most successful venture what would you say is one that you would turn to and say, we'd like every one of our projects to be like that?
Wow. It's tough. You're putting me in a difficult position, but I'll just say, I love our program in India. There was a constitutional amendment was passed in the 1990s in India that required that 1/3 of the seats on rural village councils, they're called panchayats, 1/3 of the seats needed to be filled by women. And this was a revolution in India. In the next general election that took place in India, 1 million women were elected to office.
Wow.
That's more women elected to office than in the rest of the world combined. Now, here's the catch, though. Because of the severe patriarchy and discrimination against women in rural South Asia, many of these women, because they were legally required to have the seats filled by women, many of these women were really just put into that position. Their name was filled in by their husband or their father or their father-in-law or their brother, and they weren't expected to actually serve and participate in the council. We saw an opportunity, and we recruited through local community-based social service organizations. We recruited many of these women who had been elected to those offices to participate in a residential training program where they learned what their constitutional rights were, what the duties are of serving on a village council, and how they could be effective in accessing resources from the district and state governments that they could interface with. And these women then went back to their home villages and they began to assert themselves and raise their voices and demand the opportunity to participate in the role they had been elected for. And this has really brought about a transformation. We've trained over 150,000 women in rural India to become effective during their 5-year term in office. That program has now expanded to include recruitment of more women to run. And in some of these panchayats, you'll see 50% membership by women. And in many of them, not a lot of them, but some of them, the entire village council is now women. So it's women led and all women on the council. And the communities love it. They love the results that these women bring with their passion to increase the well-being for everyone in the community. So it's very, very different from what you would think. You hear the Hunger Project, you think we're distributing food. No, we're actually empowering elected women representatives in India.
That's mind blowing. I think that's a phenomenal story and a phenomenal outcome. We have had a slogan in the past, or we use it sometimes: 664, not war. Where if people understand how they can help one another, we can eliminate wars in the country, in the world. And then, of course, Wanda has an ear for that and doesn't
blame it on me.
Yeah, you don't want to keep the word war in there. So she was saying it's 664 is the missing piece, PEACE.
Oh,
and nice. What you're describing is the missing piece. I think that, it goes back to Greek playwrights when they were talking about women going on strike and stopping the war. We need a peaceful world, and I think that there's more peace in women being leaders than there is generally in men being leaders. Now we're not talking about masculine toxicity and all that garbage. We're just talking about the way things are.
Yes.
So what's the message that you would like to leave our listeners with today about the Hunger Project?
Well, I'd like you to know that there are effective ways of ending hunger in the world, that we have had a setback during COVID and the economic crisis following COVID in just the last couple of years. But prior to that, for the 20 or 30 years leading up to that, we the world, has been making steady progress in reducing the number of people living in hunger and poverty. So many people don't know. They think of it as an impossible, like we're never going to be able to do this. It's not true. We actually cut the number of people living in extreme poverty and hunger in half from 2005 to 2020. So it really can be done. We're determined to make it happen as quickly as possible. And I would encourage people to look at different organizations. I'd love to have them look at the Hunger Project at thp.org. But find something that feels right for you, that an organization that's working by principles that appeal to you, and invest generously and in a big way. That's the other thing I like to say about the Hunger Project is we've introduced people in this part of the world to a kind of personal philanthropy that is beyond what they thought they could do. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts I'm able to give people in my work, is to open people up to making a bigger difference than they ever imagined they could.
My guest is Jim Goodman. Jim is a chartered advisor of philanthropy, I guess a recovering attorney.
Yes.
You say, and
yes.
Is the senior director of major gifts and planned giving with the Hunger Project. They always say that half of the world doesn't own a cell phone, but more than half of the world is still hungry. What comes first, the cell phone or the Hunger Project?
Yeah, right. Good question to ask.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, it's been a pleasure to. I'm so glad I encountered you, Les, and Wanda, and that we found each other. We made this happen, and I really appreciate your inviting us onto the program.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the work you're doing.
Yeah, we're going to post we're going to have you as one of our professional philanthropic advisor listings on our website at socialcharity.org. It's a free listing. We want people to know where they can reach out and find people who understand how planned giving works and how philanthropy can be a benefit to them as well. So thank you very much for the time this morning, Jim. We appreciate your work very much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you too. Thanks very much.
We've got best-selling authors.
You are going to start to uncover all the layers that are covering your genius.
And some of the world's top leadership experts.
We have structured a mastermind program that is very unusual and it is very powerful.
Robin Sharma at noon.
Your creativity will soar, your productivity will be epic, your impact will be legendary, you will be the best in the business, and you will not only achieve remarkable things, but you're going to feel sunsets. You'll feel a connection to people. You'll feel for what's going on in the world, and that will make you a world changer in your own unique way.
Robin Sharma at noon at 4 p.m.
It's a
Blaine Bartlett.
Exploration of what it takes to be a highly effective leader in today's fast-changing environment.
Best-selling author, executive, and leadership coach.
And if you've been liking what you've been listening to on these Soul of Business podcasts, how does one become a leader that can keep connection to the soul of business?
Blaine Bartlett at 4 p.m.
Look forward to seeing you there.
At Route664.org. This is Route 664 Radio.
The world a better place if we all just try. We could feed the whole human race if we all just try. And we could end our wars if we all just try. No need to lock your doors if we all just try. Just a little bit. Just a little bit, 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 just a little bit.